All right, welcome to the September 1st, 2020 regular school board meeting of San Luis Coastal Unified School District. We are underway. We do have this evening the ability for Spanish translation, and Maria Torres will be describing that to our audience.
Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos a nuestra reunión del Consejo Educativo en este 1 de septiembre del 2020. Esta sesión va a ser traducida simultáneamente al español, así que si desean escucharnos en español, hay un globo terráqueo que va a aparecer en unos minutos en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Lo van a seleccionar, hacer clic y elegir español.
Gracias. All right. We will move on with our regular open session now. Item 5.01, our announcement of closed session items. The board did meet in closed session immediately prior to our open session now to discuss the superintendent's performance evaluation and 3 items of anticipated litigation. So next, I'd like to know if we have consensus on the order of business. Everyone good? I see many thumbs up. Thank you. And next, we will have approval of our minutes from our meeting of August 18th, 2020. Are there any changes, additions, revisions? If not, then I would appreciate a motion to accept those minutes, please. Ms. Frame, you are muted. Okay. Evelyn, did you make a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I will second Evelyn's
All right.
motion.
We have a motion by Evelyn, a second by Walt. Mark? Yes. Catherine? Yes. Marilyn? Yes. Chris?
Yes.
And Ellen, yes. All right.
Walt, yes.
I called you. You seconded the motion as well.
Oh, but I vote for it as well.
And you voted for it as well.
All right.
You're good. All right. Next, we have, I'm so glad to see you, a couple of student representatives to the board. Thank you for coming. We're glad you're here. So I am first going to, since you're not sitting at a table next to each other, I'm going to decide who will go first tonight. And Rosalie from Morro Bay High, would you give us an update?
Hi, I'm Rosalie. I'm the ASB president at Morro Bay, and just some quick updates for how our school year is getting kicked off. We have our first Spirit Week through ASB, which is Wellness Week. I have a video that I sent over to Miss Dawson that hopefully you guys will be able to view for that. It's basically just like making sure students are starting off the school year well. Yesterday was Pajama Day. Today was Touch-In Tuesday, so like reach out to someone you haven't talked to in a while. And we really just want to make sure our students are doing well and staying in contact with school more than just through their classes. And another way we're going to be achieving that is through, we're doing a virtual club rush because we know a lot of kids stay connected through the school community, not only through things like sports and theater, but also other clubs. So we will be having clubs still being able to meet through Zoom. So that's kind of what's happening at Morro Bay. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you for your report. I love that you eased into the school year with the Pajama Day. You know,
I mean, for many kids, every day's Pajama Day.
I know.
Teachers, I'm sure too. So
it won't be more startling when you have a dress-up day. So, but
yeah,
at least from the waist up. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
And Ben Jackson.
Hey everybody, my name's Ben. I'm the ASB president from San Luis Obispo. And yeah, so along with Rosalie, it obviously is pretty tough to, encourage spirit and everything from Zoom. But what we did was before the first week of school, we did this freshman orientation where it was almost the whole freshman class on Zooms, and we did different breakout rooms where we just got to know everybody. That was super fun. And then we also did one for the transfer students, and we really feel for them because coming from a different state, like we moved from Texas, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, even, it's crazy. So they have no friends here. So we were just trying to kind of make them feel included in the campus. Also, we have this, so that was kind of the main Zoom focus we had. And then on campus, we've had some spirit days where, like Rosalie's pajama day, they were kind of like kicking off the school year, like your first outfit of the day. And then we reposted those to Instagram. And then the first Black and Gold Spirit Day of the week was on Friday, and we also did that on Instagram. So Instagram's kind of been our main platform for publicizing those things. But other than that, we have another ICC Club Rush going on. Our ICC Commissioner, Eric Santiago, is going to be putting that on. And then we're actually going to try to pull off a virtual rally on Zoom. So it's going to be pre-recorded where our Spirit Commissioners, Noah Clausen and Uno Unamar, are going to be commentating over it live time, but it's going to be pre-recorded. So trying to, include everyone, kind of make the freshmen feel like they have some pride going into the school year. But other than that, we just want to keep touch with the transfer students because, we really feel for them. And our freshmen are kind of our main focus right now. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your awareness of the students who are not only new to the school, but new to the area. I think the compassion you're displaying for the awareness of that very difficult transition. I really appreciate that. So thank you. So as always, you both, I'm sure, have had your fill of screen time today and may have homework, may have other things to do and activities that do not involve sitting in front of your computer. So if you would like to move on with your evening, we certainly understand, and we're so glad you're here and look forward to a report at our next meeting. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
See you again soon.
All right, our next item is correspondence. And at the time that this agenda was published, the board had received no official correspondence. Next is public comment for items that are not scheduled to be addressed later in the agenda, or if they are to be addressed later in the agenda, but someone from the public does not wish to wait that long, you are welcome to address it now. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Jeremy, here with me, is the keeper of the clock. You will be timed. This is for you can either let us know you wish to speak by using the hand raising icon on Zoom, or by using the form that is included online with the agenda. And we also will request public comment as we go through the meeting. At this time, I am going to read one public comment that was sent to us with the request that it be read at this point in the agenda. So this is from Angelina McKee. It says, hello, I have spoken previously to the board regarding my opposition to the development or sale of the Morrow Elementary School site. I am a graduate of Morrow Elementary and SLC-USD and a parent returning to our community with 2 SLC-USD students. Not only is Morrow Elementary a historic and culturally important site, but it also offers one of the only green spaces large enough remaining in Morro Bay for sports and other activities. I know many other Morrow Elementary Falcons, teachers, and community members interested in using and preserving the significant community property. Some suggested using these surplus classrooms to reduce class sizes upon children returning to the classroom, but that is likely another discussion for another time. I spoke with Ryan Pinkerton and he recommended that I present for public comment regarding my interest and intention to start a fundraising initiative. I am hoping to start a discussion on how to raise funds or a volunteer task force to ease the financial burden that upkeep and maintenance of this site may impose on the school district. According to the Measure D projects, this campus needed major infrastructure work. Funds were used to upgrade sewer and water lines as well as replace all of the asphalt on the site. Construction cost $827,184. It is inspiring to know that the school district is continuing to upkeep the property, and we'd like to try and help going forward to prevent site alterations. With all of the years of students that have walked the halls, danced in the folk dance festival, played on the blacktops, and the many sports activities held at the site, there are many people who care deeply about this site and would like it to remain as is for generations to come. In the short time and few people that I have spoke to about the potential sale or redevelop, people have started contacting me regarding ways that they can donate or give back to save and preserve this space. I would like to start fundraising with permission of the board or direction on how to go about this process before collecting and raising funds. Our community has had success in the past with fundraising to preserve important historic sites such as Cayucos Pier, and we are ready to step up to save this central community site, utilize sports fields, historic and architectural buildings in the place we know and love, our beloved Morrow Elementary. Thank you for your time and consideration. All right. Is there anyone else, Jeremy, who's?
If you don't know how to raise your hand, click on the participants icon on the bottom and you'll see a side panel pop out. And from there, you can see the raised hand icon. So if you'd like to raise your hand, feel free to do so now. And also, if you want to speak and you want to have your camera on and you're having difficulty turning your camera on, just let us know and we'll pause for a second. We'll work with you to get your camera turned on, okay?
Thank you.
I'm gonna wait a half a second. Nope, no.
Okay, and we have no additional written public comment. All right, at this time, we will proceed on with our agenda. Next is Superintendents Updates, and first is our business and budget update. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, the board probably saw some emails flying around. There was an issue with payroll throughout the entire county, Slowco and Union Bank, and getting checks out. So that the last few days has been just pretty upsetting. I know for people, to get your money in your account and see that your check was reversed. They were able to handle most of those issues this morning. So reissue checks. Now they have to deal with some people that were double paid. There were still a few that were having issues. So I just want the board to know that Slowco is handling it, working on it, working with Union Bank to get any type of fees that were charged or anything like that reversed. So Sheldon Smith over at the County Office of Education is working on that. And again, it was all the school districts throughout the entire county that were impacted by this. On a happier note, it looks like the federal government and the state are going to allow us to continue to feed all families and all kids. So that is something that Aaron is jumping into, Aaron Primer, our food service director. So we should hopefully in the next week or two have that back on board in terms of having all families be able to go through the lines or get weekly meals. As we begin to have students on campus again, potentially with our special education classes, along with our childcare, Aaron is working out ways to feed those kids on campus, hopefully on a daily basis. So it was really good news for us. So, we only had about 500 to 600 families go through, and we were used to close to 2,000 at the end of the school year last year in terms of people coming through and getting food. So that'll be a welcome addition for us to be able to feed more people. In terms of childcare sites, I've been working with all the providers, working with our principals at the sites. It's going well. There are some issues that, that come up, and just, basically having 14 kids and a few adults in a room and trying to get everybody on board, to learn the signing into Google Classroom and Seesaw and the different, programs that they have to do. But it's been successful. Overall, very positive input. Of course, parents were I'm extremely thankful to the board of putting funds forward to assist with child care providers and lower costs to families. That was a huge relief to a lot of people, and Dr. Prater and myself received a lot of letters to that effect. And then lastly, on kind of an unfortunate note, it looks like the state Senate legislature is not going to listen to the Senate bill, I think it was 1084, about restricting liability for school districts. So it actually died, that bill, which would basically help school districts move forward and not have to worry about being sued, or you still have to follow all the rules and guidance of the state, but because there is absolutely zero liability coverage through our insurance, it makes it very, very difficult for us to even consider having large groups again back at our school site. So it's really unfortunate. Our hope was that again, throughout the state, this is something that's in fact impacting everyone, but there's a school service article that just came out today that basically said that I think some of the attorneys were worried, civil rights attorneys and things were worried about the the law, and basically got it killed before it even was listened to in committee. So again, a lot of letter writing, CASBO, school services, people trying to talk the governor into moving forward with some type of liability. And we'll continue to watch that as we move forward and talk about basically reopening schools and bringing kids back. But it's something I think the public needs to understand as well, that these are tough decisions that we have to make as we reopen our school sites. And that's it.
Thank you. Chris?
Hey, Ryan, that's great news about the federal government food waiver, but I think it's important to remind parents to continue to apply for free and reduced lunch.
Absolutely.
And so if you just address that for a minute, and just how key that is, not only to feeding kids, but to other funds that might additionally flow to our schools.
I mean, it's one of those things, Chris. Yeah, it's super important, right? In terms of having parents continue to fill those forms out. Again, this only lasts until December. So, the current rules or opening up of the food service back again is going to go through December, which is our current closure date. But if it goes past that, we have to wait and see each time whether they're going to extend it or not. So it's super important. We receive federal funds based on the number of students that fill out their free and reduced lunch and qualify, as well as our foster and homeless youth that we track. So we really need parents to continue to fill those forms out. Again, Aaron, along with the principals, is sending those out. In some ways, the first couple of weeks not having that in place, hopefully got a lot of our parents to fill those forms out to move forward with it. But it's something we'll monitor as well and make sure that we're following up with individual families that if they qualified last year and haven't filled out their form, to make sure that they do.
Thank you. All right, next is our educational services and COVID-19 updates. Here we go.
Great, happy to share those with you. So I'll go ahead and do the superintendent's update first. So to let you know, the week before school started, we had some amazing professional development, lots of training for teachers, as well as collaborative time for them to work together, planning time for them to take time with their teams, with small groups, and set up time for their individual classes. So huge, really successful, great work happening that week. Just a huge shout out to Rick Mayfield, also Laura Storm, the MTSS team of people that we now have working on creating great instructional strategies and supports for students, along with mental health supports. And I'll give you some more detailed information about that here in a little bit in the next presentation. We also, as you heard from some of the high school kids, had some successful, first week of school. So lots of great things going on. Of course, the fun of a national Zoom scare right in the middle of it, but lots of people really stepping up, doing great work that have taken the time to really improve things since the spring. Of course, nothing's perfect yet, and we still have things to keep improving to ensure that students are engaged to a maximum level, and also improving the small group work that's happening in the afternoons. But lots of great things going on. Super high attendance. So, we have really high student attendance rates right now. So that's great to see, and we, we'll work to keep that at that high level. So good news there. We've actually started with a few back to school nights as well. Of course, they look different and not in person. Some schools are doing just kind of a live classroom that you go through. Some people are doing recorded videos, and parents can check them out that way, but still really informational nights and ways to connect with the teacher and bring families together with schools. So that's been very successful. Last thing to cover is just athletics, an update there. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in having some students back to begin practicing with teams. So we're going to kind of continuing those discussions. As do we all know, we've had new information and new guidelines come out. So we have a planning time on Thursday, and then again at the beginning of next week, so that we can work on kind of finalizing some of those plans, and then we'll need to submit that again to our local public health based on the new guidelines. So more discussions and planning happening there, and we should hear some more information about that soon. And then should I go right into the COVID-19 update, Ms. Sheffer?
Please.
Okay, great. So just a couple of things there. As we've talked about, the floor keeps shifting, right? Things keep changing, and we will keep adapting as we learn more about this virus. But two major things to bring to your attention is that the California Department of Public Health did put out new guidelines. And I'll tell you some kind of key components of that. There's especially was about small group work. So one of the things that was interesting, a different level of specificity that we have not heard in the past, was a 14:2 ratios. That's 14 students needing 2 adults. Those were maximum numbers, so you can have less than that. So 14:2. They really emphasized a stable cohort of students. So that group of students must stay together, no mixing of the students. Just think of that one little bubble staying together throughout the day. They also did note that 25% of the capacity of the school cannot be exceeded. So imagine if you have 400 students at a school, you cannot be, having students on campus of more than 100. So they did outline that 25% capacity. Specialized services are available. Of course, they still encourage some of the things that we're used to hearing about, utilizing outdoor spaces, the use of PPE, health screenings, the 6 feet apart of distancing, cleaning, face coverings, those things that we've been used to. So some really specific new information there around the small groups from public health. The second thing is that the governor released this kind of color-coded reporting system. So they're calling it a blueprint for a safer economy, is the way it's being referred to. So you're going to find that having 4 risk levels, and it categorizes each county. So the highest level is called widespread. And so unfortunately, our county is still ranked there at that highest level of more than 7 daily cases for each 100,000 in the population, and then also more than 8% positive test. So it looks like because we meet those 2 criteria, our county is still in the highest risk level. So those kind of 2 of the big updates there, and things that have been changed and that we will continue to respond to and adjust what we're doing based on the new information coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it could look completely different at our next meeting. So we'll just see where
Likely.
things are then.
Likely.
Thank you. Okay, next we have our Measure D update.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to go by Morro Bay High and visit the new band room, new jazz band room, and the new ag mechanics lab space. So it's really super nice. Can't wait for Bryn and the kids to be able to use that facility. But it's much bigger area for him, having that separate jazz band room that's connected. just super nice, very, very nice. They also cleared the whole back area there that was kind of some old greenhouses and things. So Mr. Bonnet's working with the ag teacher at Morro Bay High to put a new greenhouse out there, and you'll as you go through, you'll be able to see what a beautiful facility it is now. I also had the opportunity to go through all of the Measure D budgets over the past week. Went through every expenditure from the beginning of the bond measure to really the end of the fiscal year 2020. Make sure all of our pennies were in allotted for right and all the costs were associated. So I'll be sharing that information with our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee soon, along with the board. So what we've done is we've taken the kind of remaining funds along with the remaining projects and built kind of a smaller condensed budget for the board to see. And I think that'll provide a lot of clarity for the board as we move forward and prioritize the remaining Measure D funds. So I look forward to sharing that with you at one of our very soon at one of our study sessions. I believe next Thursday, we'll be reviewing that with you.
Thank you. All right, we will now move on to our discussion action items. And first is item 9.01, an equity update number 1.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Mandy, could I share my screen?
You can share your screen now, Rick.
Okay. Okay. All right, so there we go. So equity, takes on a little new meaning with the terrible death of George Floyd this year and the heightened interest in doing this important work. Equity for our district has a couple of different tracks. One is the tangible educational things that we can do right now and measure, and we should be doing. And I'll talk about some of those things in the distance learning plan that we have planned for this year. But the other part is professional development on raising people's awareness and understanding of the issues surrounding equity, race, racism. It's complex, and we need to provide professional development so our staff has an understanding of why this work is so important and feels equipped to have discussions with students about issues surrounding equity. So we have done a lot of work, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. And I'm going to share a little bit of our history tonight, just to bring the public up to speed. All things that you know, of course, but and then talk about the activities that we have planned for this year. So equity in terms of through an educational lens for us began back in 2010-11 with our 10 strategic initiatives that the board approved. And these initiatives were pre-LCAP, before the state was demanding that, we looked into these subgroups, but we looked at student achievement, especially as it pertains to our English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and then, closing the achievement gap. And then when the LCAP did come out, we kind of folded our 10 initiatives into the LCAP and incorporated many of those things that we were already doing into our LCAP process. Superintendent formed the Student Senate, which most of you have participated in and observed an amazing group in 16-17 for us to hear student voices and build student leaders. And it's been such a pleasure to be a part of that group and watch those students grow. I especially like seeing my former Pacheco kids in that group, just doing awesome things. As you all know, in 2017 in the spring, we had an incident with a high school and a teacher with the school newspaper, and that served as kind of a wake-up call for all of us that, these issues are there boiling below the surface, and they need our attention, and we need to deal with them directly. So in the fall of 2017, Dr. Prater started the Common Ground Advisory Task Force, which again, a great response to an issue like that. Rather than closing off and huddling up and making the walls thicker, we opened up and invited people in and said, let's have a discussion. let's come together as a community. Let's get a lot of different voices and opinions on that group, and let's find common ground. And I think that group has said, excuse me, many great recommendations over the years, and myself, along with Mrs. McGrath, Mr. Pinkerton, have gone and done presentations in front of the advisory, Common Ground Advisory Task Force. The Equity Leadership Team was formed in the fall of 2018, and that's a combination of community members, teachers, parents, Cal Poly. We have some members from Cal Poly, and that also incorporates, or in 2018, the board had very specific goals about looking and doing things as a district through an equity lens. That year, we also brought in Trudy Arriaga and had a big kickoff. Trudy's analogy was, doors and windows and mirrors, rather, and opening doors for our students. And that she was a very powerful speaker and worked with all of our teachers over the course of that school year. One of the focus areas that year was on the Diverse Books Project. And we had a great activity where we went out and looked through our books to see if they had representations of people of color, LGBTQ representation, women as main characters, how they represented history. And what we found is that we needed to weed out a lot of books and purchase a lot of new books that brought those elements to the classroom. So kids could see windows to a wider world and see themselves, as mirrors through those books. Last school year, 2019 and 2020, we did what we called Equity 2.0. We continued a lot of the work from the previous year. We had bystander or upstander training, and one of those was called Stand Up and Act Out, where we worked with little kids to teach them, first and second graders, to give them skills on how to respond when their classmates said something unkind or were bullying to other kids in the class. We also spent some time on culturally responsive practice or culturally responsive pedagogy, which is being conscious as a teacher of how you teach in your classroom. And are you truly understanding and representing the different cultures that exist in our community within your classroom, and honoring and valuing those people, and looking at history through a lens of the contributions that all the members of our society have made. And then we began a parent workshop series as well that year, though of course last year was cut short. Our work was cut short by school closure in the month of March. And then, we've done some work with a multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, and I'll get into that a little bit more detail in the distance learning plan. So last year, this is just a review of the key equity activities that were conducted last year. We did an Equity Institute, which was excellent. 25 of our staff members participated, and there were secretaries, counselors, teachers, administrators, quite a wide spectrum of people that were involved in that Equity Institute. And it was the third year that we had participated with the same presenters, Itoko Garcia and Tovi, and they are excellent, and we're going to bring them back again this year. We did gender spectrum training for the second year in a row last year. We did a 2-day institute, October 9th and 10th, and we rolled that training out 2 sites for all the participants who participated in gender spectrum training. We had them go back to sites and present a synopsis of those 2 days into staff development and workshops. Our district equity team looked into, we had monthly meetings from October through May, and we looked into metrics and how we're going to measure our success as a district in terms of this equity work, because it's very important that it be tangible and practical, as well as the professional development that needs to be done. I mentioned previously the bystander or upstander training that has happened, and that will continue this year. The culturally responsive practices workshops. We also did an activity as well as Common Ground Advisory Task Force called Equity Walks, where we went out to an elementary site and a secondary site within the same day, and just looked at the practices that we saw there through an equity lens, and the conversations that came out of that and the things that we could identify that need attention in the future. It's a very powerful activity. We did it with administrators on November 5th of 2019, and then sites were to do it between January and April of last year. And of course, that work was interrupted. Many sites did begin in January and had some of their staff do equity walks, but the work was interrupted in March. Each site last year had a site equity plan and did some activities on their site. I mentioned previously the parent education piece. Common Ground Advisory Task Force did their site visits and made recommendations on equity, which we're following up on. And then the Superintendent Student Senate conducts the Youth Truth Survey. And this process is powerful, where Dr. Prater leads the students through how to conduct a survey at their site, how to market it, how to craft the questions to gain, student input. The Youth Truth Survey this year will be given to students from 3rd grade through 12th grade. And then the results of those surveys are kind of boiled down by the students and their site administrator and turned into recommendations that are given to the instructional leadership teams, which then turn those things into actionable goals within the single plan for student achievement. So a powerful process that those students were led through. And then key equity activities for this year, the equity team is going to dig into curriculum, K-12, because we need to look at what our curriculum, especially as it relates to race and racism. I believe today, Governor Newsom signed a bill saying ethnic studies will be a requirement in high schools in California in the future. And, we'll look into that. But really, we need to look at what does the curriculum look like from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and specifically how it broaches the subject of race and racism. Excuse me, my computer's sensitive this evening. The Superintendent Student Senate will continue, and with the Youth Truth Survey, we'll continue our culturally responsive practices workshops, and especially to new teachers. We really want new teachers to come in and understand how San Luis Coastal does business and what we expect of our teachers in terms of how they go about their duties through a culturally responsive lens, because we think this is very important work. It can be difficult for new teachers coming into a school district to learn all the curriculum and exactly what's expected of them. So we provide that training for them. We're also doing another Equity Institute. This will be year 4 of our participation, but year 3 of hosting. We're hoping to sign up 30 of our staff members to the Equity Institute, which of course will be done virtually. We're also going to do site equity professional development. So Cuesta College put out an excellent 21-day challenge last year. And, I called them up afterwards and we discussed, how we could work together to do another one this year. So basically the 21-day challenge is each day there's a theme within the realm of equity. And you look at a news clip, you read an article, there are short videos, and then you have a discussion. And so we're going to spread this out. It won't be 21 days in a row. We're going to spread this out and have all staff in the district do a version of the 21-day equity challenge along with Cuesta College. And I'll share with you, if you like, a website with information on it. But I did it last year, and it was just an excellent source. And these are things that a lot of people don't commonly read and get exposed to. And so this will be really good information for our staff. A lot of groups, teachers, administrators have reached out to me this summer. Hey, we're anxious. We're ready to go after all this awareness, of equity. We want to get, a running start on it in the new year. And we have purchased, a lot of books for not only our staff to do a book study, but also our teachers. I'm really impressed with the title requests that are coming in at our high school for different books, Between the World and Me, and titles like that are really relevant and engaging for our high school students. We're going to continue to work with our anti-bullying curriculum, And then we really want to engage the community because we know that there's a lot of interest and there's also a lot of expertise out in the community to help us to do this work. This isn't work of, you know, one person or the board to pass rules. This is educating all of us on how we can all be better citizens and do this work of equity, no matter what your role is within the school district or as a parent in our community. And so we'll be holding parent forums. We're currently meeting with some potential people who we can bring in to help us with this work, because it's important that it be facilitated by somebody who knows what they're doing in guiding a conversation that can be delicate, an important conversation, but that can be delicate and difficult. And so we want to bring in people with the skills to do that in a productive way. And so, you know, as tragic as the events have been recently and the protests, it also presents us with opportunities that gives us some momentum to do this work. I've been really pleased with how many people have reached out to say, hey, what's going on? We have to do more. Like we want to jump in, and that's great. And we certainly want to tap into all those people who are interested in partnering with us to do this work. We want to increase our community outreach and input and partnership. We really want to get to that student voice. If you talk to the students, as Dr. Prater has done through his group, it's amazing what they have to say. And, you know, they have a lot of insight into what things look like, you know, on the ground in their school sites. And so we want to continue that process. We're going to look at our curriculum and incorporate ethnic studies. We're going to continue with our ongoing staff professional development because that's a key component as well. And we're going to shift some of the emphasis to the sites, because a lot of this work, for it to really take place and you know, be effective, it needs to be site work in the classroom with teachers, with kids, with administrators happening at site. And then I'll share about our multi-tiered system of support in a couple of presentations when I discuss distance learning. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's very important that we also do concrete, tangible things that will impact student achievement academically immediately. Okay, with that, I'll open it up to any of your questions.
Thank you. First, I'd like to go to the public, see if anyone from the public would like to address us on this. All right, seeing no one, we'll come back to the board. Any comments or questions from the board? All right, thank you. Oh, Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Rick for his leadership in this. He's been amazing. And then on top of that, the work that Dr. Prater's done. I've been able to take part in some and observe some, and it's just been phenomenal. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. A point I'd like to make that I think our district can be proud of is that we were doing this kind of work before the unfortunate events over the last several months occurred. We've recognized a need for this in our community for quite some time now, and thanks to, again, the leadership we have and the recognition of and knowledge of not just our community, but of the larger world and the role we hope our students to play in that in the future as citizens of the world. This is important work, so thank you. All right, our next item, 9.01, is the implementation plan for small cohorts or groups of children and youth receiving services on our district campuses.
Thank you very much. Mandy is going to share our slide presentation. So Mandy, if you don't mind doing that. Perfect. Thank you very much. You have two presenters this evening. I'm Diane Frost. I'm the Executive Director of Student Support Services, and Joyce Hansen is with us, and she is the Coordinator of Special Education. And as Ms. Sheffer said, we're talking about in-person support and intervention services for the most vulnerable children in the district. Mandy, if you would go forward a slide. All right, so I just wanted to remind the board that You know, there's a couple of important dates in the history of COVID in the public schools, at least for San Luis Coastal. On March 16th through the end of last school year, we did close our schools and provide our special education services through distance learning or virtually. We are very proud to have offered in-person ESY, so extended school year. For those children who qualify for that service, we offered it in person for 16 days. We did have to close down for the last 4 days, and we can talk a little bit about that as we go forward, but those 16 days were critical for our students who were able to participate in that. What we'd like to talk about today is how we'd like to again bring back our most vulnerable students. And we would do that kind of building on the plan that we implemented over the summer for those 16 days. So Mandy, the next slide. All right, I just wanted to give you a couple of links to go to. We will not go to all of these links, but they're important when you talk about the guidance that we've received from the state when it comes to safety, distance learning, in-person services, that type of thing. And I know Mrs. McGrath spoke about a couple of these at the beginning of the meeting, but on July 17th, I think you're all aware that the California Department of Public Health issued their COVID-19 reopening and in-person learning framework. And that was really the point where they told us if you're on the state's monitoring list, you must provide distance learning. They also talked about a waiver for elementary schools. On the 3rd, we received guidance on schools and school-based programming. They talked about face covering, school safety, distancing inside and outside of classrooms. And then it was on August 25th that we got some long-awaited guidance. That was guidance for small cohorts, groups, and children and youth. And this is the document, including the next document, which gave us some FAQs on the same document, really gave us some information about how we might be able to open up for our most vulnerable students. And as we go through this presentation, we'll give you more information that we found in those documents. And then last, Mrs. McGrath talked about this, effective August 31st, the blueprint for a safer economy. She talked about the risk levels, where we are in our county, the idea that we're widespread. So all of those things really helped us design the plan that we are going to be presenting to you tonight. So Joyce is going to talk to you about the next slide. Mandy, if you wouldn't mind advancing. And again, we're getting into the specifics of how we'd like to open.
Yes, so thanks, Diane. So on August 25th, as Diane and Kim both have already talked about, we did get the guidance for small cohorts and groups of children. And really this gave us the details on our cohort size, the number of students that we could have, as Kim talked about, it being 14 students, and the details around that. And then the supervising adult ratio of 2 adults for that cohort. And then it also outlined the precautions and considerations that we needed to take. And we're going to go just a little bit more into detail on that cohorts information on the next slide, if Mandy can advance. So our cohort, which this is very different from our ESY program this summer, are limited to no more than 14 youth and children. In the summer, I think most of our classes were limited to 10. That size issue is not a problem for us for our more intensive special day classes. Our special day classes are small, and so that number is not an issue. But the next one was a little bit tricky for us as we were building our plan, which is cohorts must be limited to no more than 2 supervising adults. In our more intensive special day class programs, we have a high staff to student ratio because our students need that level of support. And so that was a little bit tricky for us as we were developing our plan. But we are allowed to divide cohorts as needed into subgroups of children as long as we don't exceed that 14 student to 2 adult ratio. But our cohorts cannot mix and they have to remain stable. So we couldn't have a staff that worked with 3 or 4 or 5 students in the morning, and then those students leave, and that same staff work with another group of students in the afternoon. And once a staff member is assigned to a cohort, they are locked into that cohort and group of students. And then another detail that we needed to consider as we were building our plan was that we couldn't have more than 25% of the enrollment size on campus or in the buildings. And so we also had to take into consideration where our special day class programs are located and whether or not there was childcare on those sites. And next slide, Mandy. And finally, the what we got from the guidance for small cohorts was, again, it specifies that our instruction needs to be limited, and it's targeted support services that we're really providing and that facilitates the distance learning. And so that's kind of the model that we built our program on. And you'll see as we go through our approach that we don't have a teacher in each one of our classrooms that we're setting up for students. We have paraeducators in them, and they all will have access through a distance learning model to the teacher in those classrooms. And so we can go on and talk about our approach and our phases next.
Thanks, Mandy. One more slide. So what we've designed is what we consider or call a phased approach. We right now are looking to implement phase 1, and that's where we bring our more intensive special day class students back to campus. After phase 1, and we're looking at 2 to 3 weeks of planning and then implementation, we're looking at bringing back our less intensive special day class students. And then finally, phase 3 would be limited support on a case-by-case basis per student need. And that's really working very closely with our IEP managers and our families to determine who needs the phase 3 support. And then Mandy, if you would go one more slide. So in this slide, you will see a link to our fall 2020 in-person phase 1 plan. It's very detailed. Mandy, why don't you go ahead and link into that or click into that really quickly? And then if you wouldn't mind just slowly scrolling through the plan. You'll see that we've got staff safety. All our staff will be doing staff checks before attendance every day. Our students will be doing student checks before attendance every day. Our bus drivers over the summer were absolute rock stars and took the temperature of all children who entered their bus. And then those children were fine to go into campus. Our paraeducators will be greeting families who drive their own children at the car stop so that they can do the exact same thing. It goes on. If you continue scrolling, we were very lucky to have detailed instructions from our own district's COVID opening plan and safety plan, where we've listed what happens when a child is ill, what happens if a child might be exposed, or a staff member might be exposed. So just continuing through this plan, you'll see detail after detail in what we think the safety precautions should look like in opening up school again for these very vulnerable children. And again, much of this is taken from a plan already presented to the board several meetings ago. What you will find is that we do have very small cohorts as we open up with phase 1. Oftentimes 2 to 4 children with 2 adults in several rooms with the distance learning that Joyce talked about, and the actual education specialist providing the distance learning through video in all of the classrooms. So Mandy, you can go back to to the actual, yeah, exactly. So that link is there for the board to go into great detail with if you would like. We're also providing it to our public, and it was provided to our own SLO County Public Health Department last week. And we've had email correspondence back and forth. I know that our own Public Health Department asked some questions of the state based on some concerns that we have. And ultimately, we have been given the green light to move forward with this plan. So Mandy, if you could move forward, we can talk a little bit more about some of the details. Joyce?
Yeah. So one of the big details was staffing our classes, because we are spreading our MISDC classes out into smaller cohorts. We needed to make sure that we had staffing for all of those classrooms that they're going to be in. So all of our teachers and paraeducators were surveyed, and they voluntarily agreed that they want to come back to the classroom. So everyone that's working there, it's not a requirement that any of them are back in the classroom. They volunteered and said, we want to be back. And we have a high staffing to meet that 2 adult maximum for our classes. And then again, our classes are divided into several smaller classrooms to meet the ratio needs that our students need, to make sure that we have the adult to student ratio that our students require to be supported. And next slide, please. And then also our related service providers, the guidance that we got last week also indicated, and this is a little bit different and a shift from our ESY program, that our related service providers, such as OTs, PT, APE specialists, SLPs, they can provide one-on-one services in person if they pull the child out from the classroom. And like I said, that is different from ESY, where they were only allowed to do virtual service at that time. So our nurses, our OTs, our SLPs are also eager to get back on campuses with students, and they are putting together their plans and schedules so that they can be in person and pulling students from those cohorts and working with students, mostly outside, a lot of outside with the OTs and the APE teacher, but finding places to work on campus for them also.
All right, Mandy, next slide. So when we first created this presentation, we called it a tentative start, but we're feeling far more positive and firm about September 8th, which is next Tuesday, as our implementation date, just because we received our positive feedback from our own public health department. So we start on September 8th, just a few things that are important to us. We'll have administrative oversight to ensure safety, regular feedback from staff regarding safety and needs, which was something that we did this summer during ESY. Consistent communication with families about safety precautions and student needs. And then just a reminder that staff and students will follow daily health screenings, and that's something that administrators, Joyce and I, will have oversight regarding. And then one more slide. I think it's important to know that while we are implementing phase 1, we are planning for the implementation of phase 2 and phase 3. So phase 2, student services plans to design and implement this 2 to 3 weeks after implementation of phase 1, always looking at data. Our current county infection rates, successful implementation of phase 1, and then consultation with SLO Public Health. And then finally, phase 3 as well. That's the one where we're doing case by case, talking to IEP managers, talking to families who need some in-person support. Again, infection rates, successful implementation of phase 2, consultation with SLO Public Health, but then also added here, adherence to that not to exceed 25%. The more children we get on campus, right? We do our phase 1, then we add our phase 2. We've got our childcare on that campus. We have to be very aware of the 25% limit. And that's the last of our slides. I'm wondering if you have some questions for either Joyce or me.
Thank you, Diane. First, I'll see if there's anyone from the public. And there is not, so we'll come back to the board. Marilyn?
Thank you. Mrs. Frost, I'm a little confused, and I wonder if you could straighten me out here. If we have the 14 student to 2 adult ratio that we have to maintain, many of our more intensive students, the ones that we're going to bring back first, have one-on-one aides.
Correct.
So if you had 2 students, each with an aide, you would not be able to have a teacher present in the room. So how are we planning how will that work?
So our plan, and I can use an example class. If I have one class with a teacher with 6 children, I might have 3 different classrooms. One classroom will have 2 children with 2 aides. Another classroom will have 2 children with 2 aides. And a third classroom will have 2 children, 1 aide, and the teacher. That teacher will have distance learning through computer video going on, and the paraeducators in the other 2 classrooms will help the children there access the distance learning from the teacher.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
One other question. If
yes.
If I understood correctly, the PT and OT and the speech and language pathologists are able to work individually with the students. Is that what you told us?
That is correct.
So they're able to cross what would be a cohort then.
They are.
With individual students, and that's allowable.
That is allowable. They ask that they are pulled on a 1-to-1 ratio, just for example, the OT with the single student. And while they don't give us numbers to guide us, they do ask us to be conservative about the number of cohorts that a single service provider will have access to. And I see Joyce nodding her head because she works a lot with our service providers and has spent a lot of time on this piece of it.
Okay, and then just one last question. Could you explain how we're going to address the needs of our medically fragile students?
Well, William Walters, as you all know, is our med-frag teacher, and he has been chomping at the bit to get his kids back. He is so excited. So we're doing the same thing. William and a para with 2 children, another para with another child. William has ample space in his classroom. We worked with Mr. Pinkerton and Mr. Bonin this morning, and we are devising a structure that divides his class, but gives him visual access to the kids on the other side with the para. And these are highly, and I probably should have said this as we were going through, we have highly trained paras in our more intensive programs. So when we talk about 2 paras in a classroom with 2 children and the teacher next door, these are significantly trained paras. So we feel comfortable doing the distance learning through computer with those paras being supervising and directing. I will say that the guidance does allow, if there are emergencies of any sort that might be defined by the classroom teacher, by the staff member, a third person could go out to help the staff member. And we do have our program specialists assigned to sites to help out as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mark?
Yep, thanks. So thank you for unmuting me. First of all, Marilyn's questions are spot on, and I appreciate the answers to those. They're similar, but I do have one other, and I'd just like to get a picture of my vision of the school buses, and the ones that I've seen, the students were fairly full, and now we're talking, what, 6 kids? I think we're talking about a very small number of kids on a bus. So are we talking more buses? Are we talking more runs? And are we maintaining the cohort we are with teachers? Or are we maintaining the same cohort with the bus drivers? So maybe
excellent question, Joyce.
Yeah,
perfect
yeah.
for you.
So we actually did this during ESY also. So our buses, Annie does a great job in transportation of coordinating and scheduling and figuring this out for us. And she has a plan that is dialed down to the first student that gets on the bus is sitting in the back of the bus. The next student that gets on the bus sits 6 feet in front of that student, and she fills the bus from back to front with 6 feet of space. It is just one class of students that are on that bus, so there's no cross and mixing of students. And they unload one at a time from front to back. And when they get on at school, they do the same thing. That last student that's sitting in the back of the bus is the first one on the bus, and they load them forward that way. So the students are not crossing each other when they're getting on and off the bus at all. So it's pretty amazing what she can work out from in transportation.
And so when I go back to the picture that I have, I see, to use Diane's term, kiddos sitting next to each other, and the buses are fairly full, even the buses that are handicapped equipped. And so the question is, are we going to make multiple runs, or will we be forced to make multiple runs? Will we be forced to use the larger buses for this new smaller group of kids?
I think that the answer is that they're going to be using larger buses.
Okay.
And doing it that way.
Okay.
I think that's how she did it for ESY also, yes.
Pretty good jigsaw puzzle. Sounds great.
Chris.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions that I was thinking about, in particular, for example, the medically fragile class. How do we handle the toileting needs of our students? So that's one question. Are they allowed to, we do have students who have requirements that they use the bathroom and that they be supervised in the bathroom. Is that going to be a problem? How are we working that out? And then I have another question.
So we're staffing with the understanding of our children who need to be toileted. And if you take the medically fragile class specifically, we're lucky in that there's 2 different entrances. So our children can get to their cohort space, and in each space is a restroom. So, and then if a child needs to be toileted, we have staffed the room to allow for that.
And the second question I have regards our support services, our speech language folks and those guys. So oftentimes they would work in groups with students. So for example, we might have a classroom with 2 or 3 students in it, 2 professional educators with them, either our paraprofessionals or our teachers. Would an occupational therapist or a speech pathologist be allowed to go in and work with that classroom, or are they only allowed to work one-on-one with the students in a separate facility? And I'm assuming they have complete PPE.
They'll have complete PPE, and our understanding of the guidance at this point is that it is single student pulled from the cohort, and then they do the one-on-one therapy.
Or if they're doing group, it would be virtual, just like the students that are not in the room with the teacher are getting virtual access. So their paras would be there to help them, but they would be accessing the group virtually.
And then finally, as we hopefully progress from purple to red to orange to yellow, will that increase the amount of students that can be on campus at any one time?
I don't know that answer, I'm afraid. Maybe Mrs. McGrath, or I'm not sure who else might know. Once we advance, I don't know the 25% thing and when that is tripped or eliminated.
Yeah, the way Mr. Unger, I am understanding that is 25% of the population of the school, and there's also 25% of the positive cases. So 2 different metrics there with both 25%.
Any other questions at this time? I thank you. You folks are doing a great job.
Thank you. I can't tell you how excited we are to start phase 1. Seriously, we want to get those kids back.
And I know we're so fortunate to have a great group of special ed teachers who are anxious and eager and excited to see their students face to face. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
All right, next is 9.04, review the LCAP with its new meaning. timeline and draft report.
You're exactly right. So Mandy, if you have a few slides, if you don't mind showing those. So you're right. Same four letters, two different plans. So we, as you'll remember, June, that you approved the preliminary LCAP, which was the accountability plan. So this one is changing. They kept the same four letters, but this one is the learning continuity and attendance plan. So thanks, Mandy. Just a couple of slides. So I added the draft. This would be our first draft here of that full plan. So that's the full plan, Mandy. If you don't mind, it's the one that just has the 4 slides, I believe it is.
Hey, just give me 1 second to pull that up.
No problem. So let me just explain to you a little before she pulls that up. So you'll remember that, you know, starting way back in January, it seems like forever ago, that we began gathering feedback from a variety of stakeholders in the organization to gather input around our focus areas. So we devised our original LCAP with those 3 focus areas. We had academic achievement, a multi-tiered system of support, and culture of care. And you'll remember that we had, you know, widespread input, and then everything happened in March. We still ask you to approve that preliminary LCAP for that accountability plan. Thank you, Mandy. Because we still need that focus, those focus areas, that direction in order to provide our organization those, you know, true focus areas for us to continue to move forward. Then when everything happened in March, the state waived the requirement of the local control accountability plan, that original LCAP, and instead is asking us to complete the learning continuity and attendance plan. Like I said, the same 4 letters. And this one is due actually at the end of September. So if you could go to the next slide, I'm going to take you through just some key points. And then of course, the first draft of the plan is there included in this item for you to look at more detailed. But like I said, that preliminary LCAP, the local control accountability plan, previously adopted June and had those 3 focus areas that I just spoke about. So on the next slide, we then look at this learning continuity and attendance plan. So in this plan, this is now a statewide required document, and it's broken down into these 6 main areas. So in these 6 main areas, what you're going to find is stakeholder engagement. It's looking at how are we engaging a wide variety of stakeholders, what type of learning is going on, what mental health and social emotional supports are taking place, what type of pupil and family engagement, nutrition, and then other and what they're calling increased services, which is what are we doing above and beyond for those student groups. So I'm going to take you through that a little bit, talk to you about some of the major expenditures that we're looking at through this learning continuity attendance plan. So number 1, stakeholder engagement. So what we've been doing is we have a survey out right now. We've had really strong response. I think we're nearing 2,000 responses in saying, you know, what should our focus be? How should we be spending these funds? As you know, all of you have been attending and the public has been attending these really well. We've held a lot of forums. Dr. Prater had the great idea to just kind of on these large topics. Let's hold these forums. Let's, you know, give accurate information and also gather input and ideas. And then also these different groups. So we've had leadership groups working on how we should formulate this. We've had, you know, the different groups gathering together to give input. Mr. Mayfield's taking the LCAP plan to some of our key groups, that LCAP advisory group, DTAC holding an EL special meeting in order to gather feedback, that sort of thing. When it comes to learning, it looks at different areas. It says, what is your in-person learning? So as Ms. Frost just explained, we're beginning this phased-in approach for our in-person learning, starting with special education, but our hope is also to move towards these other vulnerable student groups. The next piece being, you know, what are you doing for distance learning? So it's making sure that we're meeting the instructional minute requirements, et cetera, and that we have a different distance learning program versus the spring that really does include synchronous learning and more rigorous, more robust learning than took place in kind of the emergency situation that we're in. It looks at supports. As you know, we're doing a lot of work around what our small group supports can be. Our training, as I talked about a little bit in my superintendent's update portion, was the training that took place that week before school started with lots of information. And ongoing training will continue to take place as we see needs still arise. Staff adjustments, it's a way we can all be really proud of people that have just stepped up and have said, you know, we'll do whatever it takes in this time, and have really gone out of their way. So there's been a lot of staff that have adjusted to the needs and have jumped in. And so this in this document is a way that we're accounting for that. The next one is mental health and social emotional well-being. So again, that week before we looked at training. We've also had lessons. Joyce and Diane have done a great job of looking at what the priority lessons for our social emotional curriculum need to be, considering the situation that we're in. We've increased counseling opportunities and marriage family therapist opportunities, knowing that we are going to have some unique needs in this time. When it comes to family engagement, we're looking at how can we engage students in small groups in the afternoon. So as you know, and for elementary students, they're in middle school too, really, they're attending their scheduled classes, 3 classes during the day, and the afternoon time is spent with small group, building relationships, understanding their learning needs and meeting those needs. Sites are keeping track of engagement. Mr. Mayfield's working with Mr. Dowler, and they're coming up with a structure and a system district-wide so that we can keep track of those engagement levels, as well as what contacts are taking place. So nutrition, as we all know, Aaron Primer and Food Services has done an outstanding job, created a meal helpline, still working on these weekly meal kits, have served, just hundreds, thousands of families. So they've done an incredible job with that. We're able to account for that within this plan. And then the last one is just the intentionality, the extra work we're doing for our vulnerable student groups. So it looks at what are you doing above and beyond for English language learners, for our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. And I know that we always talk about how we are going above and beyond and looking out for those groups the most. Mrs. Storm did a great PD today with our administrators, looking at how we're really focusing on these groups in particular. So those are the 6 main areas of this new learning continuity attendance plan. And within that plan, you're going to find expenditures accounted for. Here are some of the major ones. You're going to find daycare, as you well know, that you approved the last time, a $600,000 investment in order to give that opportunity to families or reduce the cost so that people can have that as an option. Lots of money. I want to say it was about 1.2 million, I think, spent on devices, hotspots, PPE equipment we've been talking about for a while now. Lots for materials, supplies, making sure that it's in either online or paper resource that students are needing in digital formats so that they can have a high quality opportunity. The virtual learning program, this is the guaranteed program for the year, did create a lot of additional cost, but well worth it. As we said, that will give that guaranteed opportunity for families for the year. We've needed to increase staffing, some that I've already talked about in instructional strategies, supports, counseling, marriage family therapist, etc., as well as looking at our assessment system. How can we look at pupil learning loss and make sure that we're being targeted about that? So those are the 6 main areas. Those are just the major expenditures. You'll see more specifics within the plan. And Mandy, if you don't mind, the last slide. Thanks. Is just questions and answers. Happy to answer anything I can. Again, this is the first draft. We will bring it back again. We do have a parent forum. I believe it's tomorrow night and Thursday, and the survey's still out. And Mr. Mayfield's still taking it to a couple of key groups. So by no means is it finished, but we do have a great start and look to keep gathering feedback and see if additional adjustments need to be made. So anything I can answer for you?
First, I'll go to the public, please. Nothing. All right, back to the board. Any questions, Marilyn?
Thank you. Mrs. McGrath, I am very interested in our family advocates and how they interface with our families in need. I'm envisioning that due to COVID, we will be having more families wanting to take advantage of those resources than we had previously. And families that might not otherwise find themselves in need due to layoffs and what have you are now in that position. So also I'm thinking about the fact that we will be needing to reach out to students who are not connecting to school and try to figure out why and see if we can bolster them and get them involved. And that's going to require a number of people to be either on the phone or going in person or whatever. So I really strongly advocate for the proactive hiring of an additional family advocate. And I understand the cost of that is approximately $60,000, but I think that we could do that for 1 year's time, contract with Capslow or whomever for 1 year's time. And I think that I've been led to believe that those additional resources, that additional person could be put to very good use. So I'd like to share that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that input. I think you're exactly right that Family Resource Center has been an invaluable resource during this time. Mr. Deller, and they have just, stepped up and been amazing at working with families. As you'll remember, our foundation had an original goal, I think, of raising $25,000, and this community stepped up and raised $100,000. And all going to these families for their basic needs. And Dr. Prater's communication, it went out on a weekly basis about if you're needing help with basic needs, here is where you call. Our LVN stepped up to create an entire call center and answered phones and gathered information so that families could be given the resources they need. They did need additional help, I will tell you, through that, and they were able to work with a few other nonprofits to be able to pull in some additional help. So I think it's something worth asking about and looking into if they're staffed adequately, if they're able to handle it, is more staffing needed, etc. So I would be happy to ask additional questions and see if they have what they need or if they're needing additional help.
Okay, I would really appreciate that. I think that we could maybe take a look at the number of contacts and see what they are like now versus in the spring versus prior to the entire COVID experience. And I, for one, would like to be proactive in this regard rather than reactive.
It's a great point.
Thank you.
You bet.
Evelyn? You're muted.
I would like to just piggyback off of Marilyn and something you said, Kim, about looking at that actual information, that not only just the number of contacts, but the kind of need that they're seeing, pre-COVID, current, and, ongoing, because I do think the economic tsunami is awaiting us for some of these families, and it's ongoing. So I would just like some more information that would support what Marilyn is looking at, and not just the number, but kind of really what these families are searching for. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Walt?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Evelyn and the other speakers. Do we need to take a new look at, well, not a new look, do we need to reassess the wraparound services that you know, that we've talked about in the past and we've counted on them, and do we need to look at them again because of this pandemic disruption and see if we can figure out better strategies to leverage what wraparound services have provided us?
Yeah, you all bring up great points. I know that our advocates do a great job of filling an immediate need when a family's in an urgent situation, but then really working with other agencies and helping to connect them so that they can have more long-term solutions. So you bring up a good point, and let me check into things further and see if they are in need.
Thank you. Anything else? Catherine? You're muted, Catherine.
Sorry, no. I agree with with what's been said by Marilyn in particular about the need for more help for our families. I hear on the news about students who are so they're struggling with the isolation, and many of our students probably feel isolated, whether they're geographically, isolated or whether they're actually in their families' homes, and they can't get out to be with their friends. And the disruption in their lives, of their social lives and their school lives, must weigh very heavy on them. And so I hope that we can find ways of providing counseling that is even if it's just a kind of buddy program, just adults who can reach out to our students and help them through this difficult time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. I think you can tell that the board is deeply concerned about our students and how they are experiencing this difficult time. So thank you for your attention to this.
You're welcome.
Although we voted on the consensus of order of business early in our meeting, I took it upon myself, apparently, to rearrange things a bit. Mr. Mayfield has been waiting patiently for item 9.03, which is our distance learning update.
Yes, thank you, Mandy. I'll let you bring it up this time if you don't mind. Yeah, I worked very hard on this report, Mrs. Sheffer. So I was going to say, do we skip the distance learning report?
Just making sure people are awake here still.
Well, if somebody a month ago told me that the first week of school was going to go like this, with the training that has transpired and the level of student engagement and the quality of teaching, albeit with some difficulties and growth bumps, I would have been very happy. I think we have a lot to celebrate with the rollout of our distance learning program this fall. So next slide, please, Mandy. Thank you. So distance learning this year, as opposed to the spring, it's different. And we had a lot of questions coming up in summertime, and we asked folks to just sit tight and wait for the fall because it's going to be different. It's going to look different and feel different. I certainly think it has. The state passed SB 98, which gave us quite a few requirements that we needed to include and focus on this year. I think we all, including the legislature and the governor, were aware that the spring was an emergency, but now this is kind of our new reality. And so we have to adjust and make sure that students are learning and we're progressing as we should be. This time around in the fall, it's much more structured. We have structured times. We have pretty, I wouldn't say strict, but pretty structured schedules. And then students attend at the secondary level by periods each day. Daily, we have to take attendance and we have to report that attendance. Mrs. McGrath shared a little bit about the new LCAP and the requirements there, but daily attendance is one of those requirements and tracking it. The SB 98 requires daily synchronous teaching, and I observed some of it today in action, and it's really quite amazing. I went around and watched the child care centers and saw it from the point of view of the students, but also was in a teacher's class at Laguna watching a teacher teach with multiple cameras and screens, and quite amazing to see the level of engagement there. We have a new structure for our multi-tiered system of support called tiered student support, although the students prefer a small group instruction. And I've even heard they've come up with their acronym of, hey mom, I've got to take off for SGI, so I'll see you later. So, small group instruction as opposed to tiered student support. I guess that sounds better from a student perspective. And then, of course, we have our learning continuity and attendance plan, which we will follow and incorporate into the distance learning plan. We have the plan itself, which I'll go over in a moment. Some sample schedules I'll share with you. And then I want to share what we did for professional development to start off before the year began. So again, attendance taken daily. So ARIES is working on systems that will allow us to meet state requirements under both SB 98 and the new LCAP for attendance. We're having daily synchronous and live instruction where teachers are interacting with students every single day, both as a whole class and also in small groups, which is very valuable. We have supports and time that teachers get to work with students like we've never had before. And it's new learning, and there will be some, bumps along the road in terms of staff understanding how to use this time effectively. But we will do the professional development needed to bring the staff up to speed on how to make that time the most effective that it can be. We have provided over 3,000 Chromebooks. Jeremy has done a fantastic job, and with our COVID money, we've ordered and supplied over 3,000 Chromebooks and over 1,200 hotspots to families. And schools now are following up with each and every family to make sure there's connectivity and that any issues that arise are solved. And a team is kind of looking at what exactly the family needs. We have instructional minute mandates that the state has given us this time, which didn't exist in the spring, and then a weekly engagement record, which, as Mrs. McGrath mentioned, we're working on now, which will be a state requirement. We want to streamline those records so that it's not cumbersome for teachers. Next slide, please, Manny. So the distance learning plan, I linked it here. Most of you have seen the distance learning plan. For anybody in the public who hasn't, we've shared it out numerous times, but basically it gives teachers and parents a framework from which to work so that we're all dealing with the same parameters and we're all aware that this is our distance learning plan, this is what we're following. In our memorandum of understanding with the Teachers Association, we also discussed at length the distance learning plan, and that is our go-to document in terms of how we're teaching and learning this year. Again, we have daily synchronous instruction. It provides similar expectations across the district at every grade level span. So from preschool, K2 is broken out differently in terms of instructional minutes, and then 3 through 12. It's rigorous because that's important. We need to provide a year's worth of growth for our students and more for our students who are especially at need. So we need to have a rigorous academic program, but it's also balanced and fair, and it doesn't keep kids glued in front of the computer from 8:15 a.m. until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's important, we know. And then this year at every level, we will have regular feedback, assessment, and grading. At the elementary level, we didn't do a lot of grading in the springtime. It was just too difficult and too big a challenge to figure out with the younger students. We did at the upper grades, and there were some glitches there, to be honest. But this year, we will have a robust feedback, assessment, and grading system. We've ordered a program that will allow teachers to do assessment online and be able to see all students' computer screens while they're doing the assessment. It basically locks the screen into the activity that students are doing. So that will help especially our secondary teachers, to be able to conduct assessment online. Next slide, please. And then, we provided a sample schedule to our families and to our teachers to give them an idea of what a structured day might look like. This is a first and second grade sample. Most classes begin around 9 o'clock in the morning, a little bit later on Monday for teacher collaboration time, with a whole group, synchronous check-in. So everybody together, good morning, how are you? Making sure that the kids are engaged online at 9 o'clock every morning, 9:15 on Mondays. Then there's a period of time where there's either synchronous reading or asynchronous reading and phonics lessons. Teachers College at Columbia produced some excellent videos taught by their teachers of the reading and writing units of study and also the phonics units of study, which are really good. And they're also available in Spanish. And so teachers push those out, including the teachers at Baywood and Pacheco have those to push out to our kids. I watched one today, really high quality instruction. We try to build in a lot of break time. I know that teacher schedules vary somewhat from these sample schedules, and that has caused a little bit of an issue for our daycare providers, but we're exploring that. I was discussing that with them today. And then we have, activity time and lunch and PE time. And then the afternoon at all of our schools, it's from 1 to 2:30 is tiered support or small group instruction time. And again, we're providing a professional development for teachers on what this time might look like. This is a structure that our elementary staff is very familiar with. Small group instruction is nothing new. And so having this time to be able to connect with kids in smaller groups and hone in on their particular needs is a really important one. And this is a mandatory time, and you will see in this week's communication from Dr. Prater that we'll broach that with the community to remind them that 1 to 2:30 is a time where if you are scheduled for a meeting with your teacher, you're expected to be there, and that's part of your attendance. And then each day, teachers have an office hour where families or students can reach out to the teacher for any help that they might need. So the tiered support time is us being proactive and reaching out to all students, but especially those with need, academic and instructional, or even social emotional need. And whereas the 2:30 to 3:30 office hour time is more, hey, I'm here and available if you have questions about anything and would like to work on things. And I think it's really important to have both of those things. A time when we're proactive and reaching out and pulling students in, scheduling them and pulling them in, and a time when teachers are just available to students as they are needed. Okay, next slide, please, Ben. And this would be a high school schedule. So the periods are scheduled there with various, this really a bell schedule basically, with passing time built in. Instruction is whole group and synchronous and as much like a regular instructional day as possible. And then the afternoons again are that tiered support time. And this is a very new structure at secondary. And so we're working with our secondary staff to kind of design what this time looks like. And again, to make it as most beneficial to students as possible. I would say that secondary schools, by and large, have not had this much time to reach out and work with small groups of students or even students on an individual basis. And so this is a new structure and one that we hope will allow teachers flexibility to do things that they just didn't have time for before. And so there are 3 periods in the afternoon, just like there are 3 in the morning, but they're individual or small group for the corresponding period in the morning. So if it's period 1, 2, 3 that particular day, then in the afternoon, the first half hour is period 1, the second 2, and the third 3. Okay, next slide, please. So tiered support is daily 90-minute period for scheduled support. It's part of our MTSS effort. So, I discussed earlier about those tangible, academic things that we're doing for equity. This is one of them. And our multi-tiered system of support initiative is an important one. It's part of the preliminary LCAP that you approved back in June, and it's new. And so we're going to have some, growth in terms of helping teachers to, maximize this time for students and making sure that our students are learning to the best of their ability, and we're catching up those who need to be caught up. We also built into our schedule Wednesday time where teachers are released from instructional duties from 2 o'clock on, and then we combine it with a staff meeting twice a month to build in a 2.5-hour chunk of time where we can do professional development, teacher collaboration, work on curriculum and teacher groups, talk about student progress, and continue to develop teacher skill in that tiered support time. As I mentioned, all students participate. So teachers are touching in with all of their students, and not just students who need extra support, but it could be a small group where they say, hey, I noticed you guys are, finishing these assignments. Here's something, to challenge you. And so all students are participating, and it's a significant commitment to respond to what students need, what all students need. Next slide, please, Manny. And then our attendance data, Mrs. McGrath mentioned earlier, this is from Aries for last week. You'll see that the numbers are very strong. There's a couple of spots where, I'm working with the sites to verify, like San Luis Obispo High School. Mr. O'Connor tells me that there were actually absences in those first couple of days. So we're verifying, exactly, and Aries is a new system. But I think by and large, these numbers are excellent and show that, we did our work in the weeks preceding. Sites did a tremendous job of making sure that all families had devices and hotspots and that students were connected. We are still troubleshooting. This is just day 7 today, and we are still troubleshooting with those who need our assistance. But sites are following up with each and every family, each and every student to make sure that they are engaged and ready to go. And so I'm pretty happy to see these numbers. Under any circumstances, we have students missing school. And, doctor's appointments, all the myriad of things that happen over the course of a week for a student. I think in some ways, distance learning with students at home makes it easier for them to attend. So if they weren't feeling great, where in the past they might skip school, now they say, hey, I can get online. I'm at home. I'm comfortable. I can get online and participate and at least, hear the instruction the first time and keep up with the class. So I'm hoping that our attendance continues to be robust, and it'll be something we'll be monitoring and submitting to the state as well, that we're keeping track of this. Okay, next slide, please, Manny. So one of the things we heard loud and clear from everybody was, in order to prepare our teachers, we needed professional development to help equip them to this new version of distance learning. What does synchronous instruction look like? What does tiered support look like? What about the technology tools that are available and out there? How do I check in on my students in terms of their social emotional learning? We could have had 3 weeks of professional development, and it still wouldn't have been enough to do all the learning that we needed to do. But we do have the Wednesday afternoons, which will be very helpful moving forward. But Laura Storm and our 2 new TOSAs, Brittany Tricamo, who's filling in for Jeff right now on a short leave, and Michelle Cass did an outstanding job studying and preparing for this week and presenting some of the professional development. There were a lot of people involved in the technology side. Diane and Joyce did a great job organizing the social emotional professional development for all teachers, and the tier 3 work as well. But in terms of tier 1, which would be first best instruction, we went with the distance learning playbook, which is John Hattie and others produced this playbook on what are best practices in distance learning. And we covered with teachers like how to establish relationships and how critical that is for quality instruction to occur. You know, we all know that, you know, unless students know that you care about them, they won't particularly care about what the instruction in the class. And so, you know, relationships is key. For how to navigate the first days of school and developing those relationships, how to establish teacher credibility, how to be crystal clear about learning outcomes online with kids, you know, engagement, instruction, and then how to provide feedback. Tier 2 would be those interventions that teachers can do, and we have a new formative assessment system that we're rolling out, K-8, called FastBridge, which is going to kind of measure, because we're, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have a lot of great assessment data from the spring. And so we're kind of starting with, we know students suffered a little bit in their learning, and we've got to do some high quality assessment now here in the fall to see where they are. And then, you know, we talked about progress monitoring and adjusting your instruction as you go. And then, as I mentioned, we also talked with how to do and conduct IEPs and 504s and teach to those students' needs within Tier 3. In terms of social emotional learning, our elementary counselors presented to their staffs on Steps to Respect, which is the curriculum we're using for social emotional learning at that level. And then county mental health came in and helped teachers to navigate how to support students from a social emotional standpoint within distance learning, how to recognize when students are struggling and might need some extra support. And then, as I mentioned, Jen O'Hagan and many others, many of our ed tech leads, Zach Roper at SLO High has done a tremendous job. Morro Bay High staff's done a tremendous job. I mean, some people have really stepped up in terms of helping their colleagues with technology. Because as we all know, you know, we all are in different places in terms of our knowledge and ability with technology. And people have really helped each other out to learn these new programs and techniques. And we're going to spend some time on highlighting and sharing some of the best practices that we're seeing now in distance learning with all teachers so that they can, you know, see what that looks like. And then we had optional lunchtime activities during that first week to talk about self-care and inform people about the iInnovate initiative, the Family Resource Center, food service, that type of thing. Okay, last slide, Mandy. And then we did a survey, and the top set of graphs shows your level of preparedness, you know, how prepared you felt, 5 being the most prepared. And as you can see from the before and after picture there, the top is before and the last is after. Quite a few people felt a lot better about distance learning at the end of you know, our week of professional development. And so all in all, just an outstanding week. And we had an incredible DJ from the San Luis High who played music for us in breaks and took requests. And it was quite funny to watch his reaction to the teacher requests. You know, at one point he said, "You guys are crazy. I can't play that in a teacher workshop." But it was great. He was very well appreciated by the group. So again, overall, very pleased with the start of school and distance learning. You know, honestly, it could have gone a whole lot of sideways, and all things considered, we're off to a very good start. We, of course, have bumps and things, you know, to work out and improve upon. We'll be paying close attention to feedback from our community as well as our teachers, and to make this the best that it can be. We're 7 days in out of 180, and we're in a really good place. Our survey that went out, we already have 1,782 responses. Pretty amazing. And so we'll continue to monitor and get feedback and improve in our distance learning. But we're off to a robust and quality start.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. So I'll see if there are any questions from the public on this. All right, and Rick, I have a question. I know that first I want to clarify one question I had, because Jeremy is helping with the meeting, so I asked him. And that is that parents who are experiencing technology problems do have, or who are trying to help their children, have access to our IT department. Jeremy indicated that they have fielded hundreds of calls from and emails from parents seeking help, and that our IT department has actually been a resource for others throughout the county, other districts, with the way we're doing things. There also is a link on our website for that can lead parents who need have questions or would like help with technology straight to IT. So that's really wonderful. And then a question I have for you, Rick, is I know that there's time set up for students and for kind of where many of our teachers have kind of office hours to, you know, where they're available to students. Does that work for parents as well? If parents have questions that they would like, how do parents get in contact with their kids' teachers if they have questions?
Yeah, the office hour is designed for students and parents to reach out and clarify. The tiered student support time is primarily for teachers and students to interact, and those are scheduled, but the office hour, teachers are available every day at a specific time, and that's shared with the parents, and they can call in, ask any questions they have, problem solve, you know, that type of thing. But teachers are available either by phone or email or synchronously to interact with parents, and parents are made aware of that.
Okay, and do teachers at times reach out to parents if they feel they have, may want to be proactive about something they've observed about a student, or have questions if a student hasn't been participating or seems to be absent? I know I'm very impressed by our attendance rates right now, but in the future, if it appears that kids aren't showing up, will teachers be able to use that time or know that that's something they can follow up on?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll get the feedback from them, you know, as this moves on, as to how that's going, and then build those strategies in. But we've got systems in place to monitor engagement, not just what the state requires, but, you know, our own systems to make sure that every student's engaged. I remember in the spring, Leslie O'Connor saying, I think this is the most we followed up on students being engaged in school ever. And
Yes.
you know, since that time, we've only improved it. And so we have systems in place, and we're closely monitoring that students are engaged in learning and moving forward.
Thank you. All right, Chris, I saw you had a question.
I did. So kind of following up on that, Rick, I know that there have been school districts that have, I would say, less than robust engagement metrics. For example, I believe LA Unified is having some controversy about whether just logging on, for example, counts as attendance. So can you just give me a little bit more detail about how we judge engagement and, you know, the length of engagement and things like that? And then I have another question after you answer that.
Sure. So at the elementary level, there are 2 or 3 or even 4 points of contact during the day, right? So there's that initial period in the morning, and then teachers generally will push out, like let's say it's a reading lesson, and they'll be there with their kids while they say, okay, now boys and girls, we're going to watch this reading lesson, and then we're going to come back together as a group and, you know, have conversations or break out into small groups or whatever. So they're there and engaged in monitoring students working on their work during the day. And then that continues with writing lessons, with math lessons. And there are times where kids, you know, go off and they're not, you know, on live with the teacher at the elementary level. But then they come back at a later time in the day and they talk about the math lesson that they just worked on or whatever. And then the afternoons, of course, lunchtime is a break. And then the afternoons in that tiered support time is scheduled, and students are expected to appear at those times. And if they don't, we follow up with parents immediately to say, hey, I had a scheduled time with Chris at 1 o'clock today and he didn't show up. And so, you know, let's make sure he's there the next time. And then we walk the students through that. So when they do show up, hey, thank you, this is what this time is, and that kind of thing. And then we have systems for regular feedback on work to students. And so teachers will be monitoring the work that students do, and they record all of this on a spreadsheet. You know, which again, we need to streamline and take a good look at that to make sure that it's not too cumbersome for teachers to do, but it's a good record for us to have of, and for teachers too, to be able to monitor, you know, how things are going for students. So if the learning isn't there and we see evidence that the learning isn't there, then we have things that we'll immediately do to reach out and help to bring that student up to speed. And then at the secondary level, teachers are on for the entire period of time. So if you're in period 1, like if I start my period 1, I look and see there's ways to take attendance in Zoom and in Google Classroom fairly easily. And then when those things are done, I teach my class. And so you're all here, we're all having a discussion. I might have breakout rooms. I watched a middle school teacher do breakout rooms today. It was fantastic. And, you know, he'd break into a room, say, okay, how are you guys doing? How's your discussion going? And really good conversation. So there are ways to monitor that students are engaging and you know, actively learning as we go, and ways to follow up on it as well if they're not.
And actually, I have 2 more questions. The second question relates to teacher collaboration time. And I know that one of the most important things teachers can do is collaborate with each other. And I'm assuming that's the Wednesday afternoons. So I'd like to know just a little bit more about that. And then also I know teachers had talked at some point about sharing classroom responsibilities. So say 3 third grade teachers at CL Smith, for example, might be teaching separate subjects. Are you seeing any evidence of things like that going on?
Yeah, good questions. So in terms of teacher collaboration, you know, in our discussions with the association, we decided to leave Monday morning teacher collaboration time as written in the contract. So that still exists. That's still a part of our collective bargaining. We also, though, wanted time to work with teachers in the afternoons on 2 Wednesdays a month, because we knew that there would be a greater need for professional development, and that teachers would need more collaboration time than just the Monday allotted. So you know, and we're in the process now of gaining input from instructional leadership teams and planning out that Wednesday afternoon time so that it meets the site needs, but also, you know, gives us an opportunity to work with teachers. And then your second question again, Chris, I'm sorry.
Are we seeing groups of teachers collaborating with each other and teaching, you know, sharing lessons and things like that? I know some teachers have expressed a desire to do that. So are we starting to see a little bit of that as well?
Yeah, K-6, we actually spent a lot of time, teachers working together who volunteered to come forward and put the scope and sequence together for this first trimester of learning. So every teacher at kindergarten has the same scope and sequence with the lesson links already built in for pretty much the entire trimester through November. And the same thing with math, same thing with, you know, that's kindergarten through 6th grade. 7th through 12th grade, because, you know, the subjects are more independent, they basically built their own classes, but we have been encouraging and discussing collaboration across sites, especially given the fact that we have a common schedule now. So we'll be doing some of that collaboration across sites in subjects, like all algebra teachers at 9th grade working together via Zoom in collaboration time. There's really some unique things that we're going to get an opportunity to do instructionally that we've never done before in our district. And I think there's going to be a lot of growth in our faculty that comes from it.
And then finally, how's the virtual academy coming along? How many students do we have enrolled?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll be honest, when I first was envisioning the virtual learning program, I'm like, good grief, how are we going to do this? What is this going to look like? But again, just really, really pleased with how it's gone. Darla is heading that up at the elementary level. It's pretty much identical to the rest of K-6 learning. our teachers, our curriculum. They're all using the same resources. We've had a few minor problems with like how to deal with kids in Aries that are at all these different sites and things like that. Our numbers turned out to be relatively small, K-6 in the VLP. I think because we went with Plan C, distance learning. And then at secondary level, we ended up with a number of students. I want to say it was like 160 or 70 students. And teachers, Chris Dollar has done an outstanding job being the point person there. And he touches base with me every day about the progress we're making. And so we offered, I think, a pretty robust collection of classes for those students, 7 through 12. We even brought in STEAM classes for middle school students and provided them with laptops, so that they could do those courses. And he had a teacher meeting today, and he said it went really well, and people are feeling very comfortable with the format. And I've not received one email from a concerned person on the VLP to date. Knock on wood.
Anyone else? Walt.
Hey, Rick, thank you for all of that. You're amazing. And I just want to say you have perhaps the best virtual background of any Zoom person I've seen, unless that's really your house, your background.
Well, with all my free time, I've been doing a little painting.
Anyway, thank you, Rick. You're a jewel.
Mr. Miller, I appreciate that. I hear over and over again from people how fortunate we all feel to be a part of this district and a part of this team. And it's truly a team. I mean, everybody's working together to make this happen. And I'm just very proud to be a part of it.
Thank you. All right. We will now get back on track. And our next is 9.05, which is Board Bylaw 9270, Conflict of Interest. This is a first reading. Is Kim doing this? Yes, she is.
Yeah, so this is a board bylaw that we have to bring each odd year. So it's just a routine procedure for us that you voted on in 2016, 18, and now again in 2020. So we are just bringing this one forward as a routine bylaw. Would appreciate, we can follow the same pattern of first reading if you'd like, and bringing it back a second time for a second reading.
What is the, Chris, and then Marilyn?
I know we have to go to the public, but I would, if the board would approve, I would suggest that because there are no changes to it, that we waive the second reading and take a vote today.
Marilyn?
Yeah, essentially it's the same thing. If it's just pro forma, then why don't we go ahead and move forward tonight?
Right. I will go to the public. No one. All right. So based on that, Marilyn?
I was just going to move approval.
Oh, okay. All right. Go right ahead.
I don't have it in front of me. I move approval of Board Bylaw 9270 as presented.
Okay. And
second.
Walt is the second. All right, I will go through the list. Marilyn?
Yes.
Walt?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And me, yes. All right, so that carries 7-0. All right, next is our action consent items. Please let me know if you'd like any of these pulled. 10.01, acceptance of donations. 10.02, disposal of surplus. 10.03, approval of furniture and equipment request.
Ellen, will you pull item 1, please?
10 donations.
Yes, please.
Where was I? 10.04, approval of warrants and payroll. 10.05, approval of certificated and classified personnel items.
Pull, please.
10.06, approval of purchase orders and CAL card purchases. 10.07, reappointment of SELPA CAC representatives. All right, if I could have.
I'll move approval of items 10.02 through 10.02, 10.03, 10.04, and 10.06 and 10.07.
Perfect. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Millar, a second by Mr. Unger. Walter.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
Evelyn.
Yes.
Marilyn.
Yes.
And I am yes. All right, Marilyn, you pulled
Me too.
10. I wrote you down. Yeah, I have you as the second. I guess I kind of assume if you make it the motion and second it, you're in favor of it. All right, so Marilyn, you pulled 10.01.
I did, and I'll just be very brief, but I noticed if under donations that the district had received a substantial, a $10,000 donation from Miners Ace Hardware to assist with our student technology needs in this time of distance learning. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and express our appreciation. And
Okay.
that's it. I'll move approval of that item.
Okay, what I'd like to do, Marilyn, since you pulled 10.05 also, if you can do, then we can do both of those at the same time.
Sure. The reason that I pulled the personnel item was because in looking through it, I was shocked and dismayed to see that Julie Lang has decided to retire at the end of this year. And I just wanted to call attention to what wonderful service she has given to this district over the last 13 or 14 years. And just to express that I have appreciated her conscientious work, her fine reports, her great answers to questions, and just to tell you that I got the feeling about Julie Lang like I always got about Walter Cronkite. Everything's going to be all right. So just wanted to mention that we still have her for 3 more months, but I wanted to acknowledge her pending retirement. And with that said, I'll move of that item.
Ryan, how are you gonna do the books from now on, huh?
He's crying.
I don't even want to bring it up. Why are we even talking about it?
Ryan, I think you need to do something about this.
Yes.
I do too. I'd like to acknowledge her calm and aplomb through all these years of ups and downs. It just, no matter what the actual numbers were, just felt okay because Julie presented them to us. So I agree with Marilyn and everyone, and we'll have to make sure we do a proper send-off.
I think so. So I'll move approval now of that item if there's no further discussion.
I just think we should audit her work. It would come out very favorably, I'm sure.
We will, we will.
Okay. All
Jewelry
right, Marilyn.
always helps also. I've noticed. Don't give her technology, give her jewelry. Mr. Pinkerton.
Okay, Marilyn, did you want to make a motion on items 10.01 and 10.05?
I'll move approval of items 10.01 and 10.05.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Marilyn, a second by Walter. Marilyn.
Yes.
Walt.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Evelyn,
Yes.
and me as well. All right. Thank you very much. All right, we will move on to anything for the advance agenda. And then board reports. Any board reports?
Just have a quick one.
Okay, Catherine, then Walt.
I just would like to share the unique experience of my first ever virtual back to school night at it was at Teach School last night, and Darla Batistic worked all the ropes behind the scenes because it was, I'm sure, a first time for everyone, but it was very successful, and I just want to thank Darla and let you all know about that for next time around.
Thank you. Walt, then Evelyn.
I just wanted to say that I miss you all.
Oh.
Look forward to hopefully someday having these in-person board meetings, but I miss you all.
Thank you. Evelyn, top that.
Yeah, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna break down and cry. Well, I just wanted to piggyback on Catherine about attending the virtual back to school. I was fortunate enough to go to a few of those, and it's a unique experience. And I'm feeling it for the teachers, and I'm feeling it for the site administrators, and they're doing a great job. What I was really excited about, and if you all get the opportunity, I got invited to go to the Innovation Lab at Hawthorne. And I was able to go and meet with Christine Robertson and I think Dr. Ben McAdams, and take a tour of the lab, and James McMillan and Katie Peters and Sarah Tosas. It just looks like a phenomenal kind of playroom, engineering, hammers and saws and screws, the tinkering that our students will be able to do, robotics. It just was a real testament to the inspired learning challenges that we hope to create. And then I also got to see those boxes that have been delivered, and I'm sure we've all gotten a lot of comments about kids being excited about that. So I wanted to thank the foundation for doing this. And when things get back to normal and our kids are able to go experiencing these labs, and all of us can go watch it, it's a pretty powerful place to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, I also attended a couple of the back to school nights, and you're right, they were a little different, a little effective though. I was gratified to see the number of of attendees. It was really good to see, and to see for the few minutes watching before videos were turned off, to see how many students and parents were attending together that I was able to see. So good work to Los Osos Middle School and Bishop's Peak and Sinsheimer that I went to. So, all right, well, we'll see you at our next meeting, everyone.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Take care. Good night.
Great job, Ellen.